Welcome to Retirement Planning in Your 40s. For those of you just joining us, this is part of a three-video series of retirement planning beginning in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. So, jumping into this one, this is going to be really geared towards someone that is starting to plan for retirement in their 40s or maybe late 30s if you're just catching up. But what we talk about in this video is going to be applicable to anyone having retirement planning discussions in their 40s. So, jumping into it, let's look at strengths and weaknesses right off the bat. So one thing I think you'll notice really quickly is time is both a strength and a weakness in your 40s, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But as far as time goes, it's for the strength side, you still have time to let your assets compound, to let your accounts really grow and develop over time. Again, we often call it the snowball effect, where you make a snowball, roll it in more snow, and it gradually gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but you don't necessarily have as much time as you would have if you started that prior decade in your 30s or in your late 20s. Another strength you're going to have is life's pretty much leveled out. So, one of the big issues really facing younger investors is they have so many life changes that are happening that they have to plan around, they have to keep cash for. It just creates a very difficult road for them to try and plan long term because there's so many short term hurdles. You get into your 40s and a lot of those major hurdles like buying a home, starting a career, starting a family have already passed. You're getting to a period of life that is a lot more stable for most cases. Your kids are just gradually getting older. Typically, you're well into your career, you're typically in your long-term home. So there's not a lot of major financial changes that are going to really affect your day-to-day spending like there were in your 30s. And then two, greater resources. You're further in your career. You typically are hitting your higher earning years in your 40s. You're having a little bit of excess. You've had time to grow your savings accounts. You have time for your investment accounts to already have grown. So you just have a little bit more to work with in your 40s. As far as weaknesses, time again, it's starting to be a factor to where you don't necessarily have as much time to invest and save. So if you are just starting in your 40s, it can be working against you. Often you also have new expenses. So, not necessarily as many life changing expenses, but you do have new expenses. So, rather than dealing with childbirth, you're now raising children in most cases. And you're also looking at probably starting to plan for college cost as well in your 40s. And the final weakness is if you don't have a plan built from a retirement standpoint, you need to. It's very much something that you need to start thinking about. You need to start really trying to clarify what your retirement outlook looks like when you want to retire, what you want to be doing in retirement. And if you don't have that plan, you're really just moving aimlessly. So, first off, life starts to slow down. Really what we're looking at, this chart right here is a list of major life events that you typically see in someone's life. And if we'll notice, there's really only about three of these that take place in your 40s. So you have children leave home, and that's usually children leaving home for college, which is right at the end of your 40s, and then typically the death of a parent. Now, as far as a major financial burden, divorce is really the only two of those, or the only one of those three that you see typically has a lot of very real damage to your financial health. Divorce is one of the biggest wealth destroyers out there, just having to one, split any existing assets in two, but two, you're now losing a lot of that ability to grow because you don't have that dual income coming in or dual sources of savings. The other two, death of a parent could arguably, if you get inheritance, benefit your financial picture. And then children leaving home, it's usually a double edged sword in the sense that if they're leaving, you're paying for college, which is adding an expense, but it is getting them closer to you're not paying for kind of them living in your household expense. So utilities go down a little bit. And then again, it's closer to that child going off on their own and you not needing to necessarily pay for them anymore. As far as greater resources go, what we're looking at is where you see in your 40s and 50s right here that by average, your savings accounts typically the biggest it's going to get prior to retirement, as well as if you look in the 40s and 50s right here, your income's really peaking. Late 40s, early 50s, your income's going to peak, but mid 40s, your income's right up there before it starts to kind of trail down, leading to your retirement a little bit. So you're in those peak earning years. So again, this is more resources for you to be able to put towards retirement, kind of plan out a little bit. And this is too where when we talk about a plan and needing a plan, having those resources and utilizing this time period well is huge and can make all the difference when you do get in that retirement age. Now, as far as time, this is where it can be a double-edged sword because if you started in your 30s, what this chart is showing is someone that starts in their 30s and let's say makes 60,000 a year. If they start at age 30 and make 60,000, assuming they're staying invested and we're adjusting for inflation and everything, they can save about 8% of their income and maintain a lifestyle throughout retirement about the same as what they were when they were working. However, if you, same person, make $60,000 a year, start at 40, well, you're looking at 14%. If you start at 45, 19%. So, yes, you might have greater resources available to you, but you're still looking at putting 19% of that away if you were waiting to start till 45. That is a tough pill to swallow, no matter who you are, especially if you've spent your entire adult life not saving. You're used to spending that 19%. You're used to it kind of coming in and going out. And now you're having to kind of cut back all of your expenses by 19% in order to kind of better utilize that in a retirement account at that point. It is a very, very difficult thing to adjust to. So that's why starting earlier is always preferred, and that's why time is used not quite as bad as 28%, but it is running out from that standpoint. Now, here's another kind of cool chart that we like to look at from a time perspective. So, this last chart was the percent you need to save every single year. This chart is checkpoints, what you want to have saved by a certain amount. So, if we go back to this 40-year-old and they're making $60,000, well, at 40, if you're just starting saving, the percent you needed to save was 14%. But if you have already started saving over time, you want to be somewhere between 1.7 of your salary. So that's going to be your salary times 1.7. So at least almost two times your salary, just a little under it. By 45, you want to be about two and a half times your salary. By 50, you want to be three times your salary. So this is something you can look at and say, all right, well, I've been saving say 5-10% into a retirement account. You get to 40 and you're only at one and a half times salary, or you're only at one time salary. Maybe this is something you look at and you say, I need to adjust. I was saving, say, 8% into my 401k. Let me bump that up to 10%. I need to play some catch up. And then at 45, you're not two and a half. Adjust, play catch up. You can make these adjustments. It's not something that you do at once and you're locked in for the remainder of time. It's you can make adjustments, but having a kind of grid like this where you can look and see, hey, am I on the right track? Am I saving enough? Do I have enough saved for my age? This is a great frame of reference. Now, looking at some cons and weaknesses other than time is expenses. Expenses are typically increasing for you. You don't have a lot of those one off expenses, but you do see expenses gradually grow over time, right in par with those greater resources. What this chart over here is showing is you hitting it's starting at about 45, 50, and you're peaking your expenses right around 50, and they gradually go down as you get older, you go further into retirement all the way to 95. And then it breaks it down. Now, one thing I will say, this is assuming a fairly well-off household, and what we're looking at here, like those big peak expenses, it's not really changing across the board up here. But this green expense, that's going to be college education cost right here. That's going to trickle off as your kids go through college. But one thing too, all of these you'll notice like this is food and beverage, transportation, other, which is going to be miscellaneous spending. These are all very much subject to every individual household. So when you look at these, yes, traditionally that late 40s, you're hitting your peak spending. But if you're hitting your peak spending and you've already been used to saving 10, 15% of your into your 401k of your income, that's fine. You're saving enough. But it's when you hit your peak spending and you're not used to saving anything towards retirement that it can really be a detriment. And you have to really make sure that you are monitoring where you're spending your money. Um, the last thing is building a plan. So if you are in your 40s and you do not have a financial plan, you really need to start thinking about building one. It is something that is far, far more useful than I think a lot of people give it credit for. It's not something people have to do. It's not like paying your taxes where you're required to do it every year, but it is something that is very beneficial. Charles Schwab, a big brokerage firm, put out a survey and essentially said 44% of planners felt very confident they would reach their financial goals compared to only 18% of non planners. That's a very big jump. 54% of people that had a plan felt confident as opposed to 18 that didn't. That's very, very huge. And what you look at when you look at a financial plan is financial health, risk, investments, retirement, taxes, estate plan, education plan. He says, am I saving enough for my kids' college? Am I financially healthy right now? Do I have too much debt? Are my expenses a mess? Do I have a budget? Do I have any sort of plan? Risk and investments go hand in hand. Are my investments aligned to what my retirement goals are? Am I taking too much risk? Am I not taking enough risk? Am I maximizing my taxes? Am I paying too much in taxes? Am I saving in the right type of account to minimize my taxes now? Or do I need to try and save in a different type of account to minimize my taxes in retirement and estate planning? Do I have an estate plan? Do I know what an estate plan is? Do I have beneficiaries on my accounts? If something were to happen to me, where it's going to go, what's going to happen to my children? How's that money going to be divvied up? What's going to happen to our family dog? What's going to happen to our cars? What's going to happen to my house? If I have a rental property, what happens? If I'm a small business owner, what happens to my business? There is a lot of things that need to be fleshed out in a financial plan. And the older you get, the higher your resources are, the more complex your family situation gets, the older your kids get. Those things really need to be mapped out to say, all right, I'm getting fairly close to my retirement age. I'm late 40s, I'm 10, 15 years out, possibly. Do I have enough saved? What is my spending strategy in retirement? What do I want to do in retirement? These are all questions that really need time to be built out. So, again, if you do not have a financial plan and you are in your 40s, highly recommend you do it. You should do it if you're in your 30s or your 50s, but definitely you're getting to the point now where in your 40s, your retirement picture is going to be a little bit clearer just because you're a little bit closer to it. And that's where you can really start to map out with a lot of certainty what that picture is going to look like. But again, hope you enjoyed this video. Look forward to our more videos we're putting in the future over various financial planning topics as well as financial planning in your 50s and 30s. But thanks.